In this video, we're going to tackle Sketchup's Move tool. We're going to do it in the context of landscape design, but it'll be pretty transferable across industries. It's going to be based on a little site that I've already built in Mitcham, Australia, and it's a Chinese/Japanese garden. Now, at the start, we'll race through the tool, and for those of you who are fairly computer literate, you'll be able to pick up things quickly, and then we'll slow things down and go into more depth into some more advanced uses of this tool towards the end. I hope you enjoy. You can hit subscribe down the bottom if you're on YouTube. Have fun. Let's race through the basic functions of the Move tool, and then we'll come back in more detail afterwards. So first of all, here's our Move tool. It's 4 arrows pointing outwards, but what I want you to do is use the M key on your keyboard to activate it. Generally with this tool, it's best to hit the spacebar to bring up your cursor and select the object that you want to move first. So the most basic function is to hit M, click once, move your mouse, and click somewhere else, and your object will have moved. The next iteration is to click somewhere and then tap either the left arrow, right arrow, or up arrow to control which axis it locks to as it's moving. Once you're comfortable with that, we can also click once, move our mouse, and tap the control key to get a duplicate. Extending on that, we can also hit Shift and the number 8 to draw an asterisk and then enter how many duplicates we want. So I'm going to enter 3 and push enter, and now I have 3 evenly spaced ones. And the final example of this would be to divide shapes over a known distance. So I've tapped the control key, I've clicked at the end of the area that I'd like multiple arrayed within. Now I hit the slash key and how many instances I would like to divide across there, 3, and enter. There we go, we've got evenly spaced objects within that perimeter. Now let's go back to the start and slow things down. In this first example, I'm going to hit the spacebar key to bring up my cursor, and then I'm going to click once on this component that I've already created, this paver. From here I'm going to hit the M key for move, and I'm just going to click in the middle of this and start moving. And you'll notice as it's moving, it's trying to grab onto an axis, and it's staying the same distance off the ground. So I can just move my mouse, click somewhere else, and the paver will end up there. Now, we're not always that lucky that it ends up in the space that we want it to. So next we're going to look at some different examples and how you could work your way around them. So again, I'm going to hit spacebar, click on the object that I want, and then M for move. And again, I'm going to do this, and we're going to travel into this object, and you can see now that I'm not quite getting necessarily the results that I'm expecting. So at the moment I'm just moving it sideways, and it's staying at the same distance above the surface. Now as I approach another object, at the start it's getting trapped inside that, and then as I approach a line, it's snapping onto the line. But now my paver is being stuck inside the object, and potentially what I'm after is to have this paver sitting up above the surface. So let's talk about tackling that. Okay, so again I'm hitting spacebar, selecting my object, and now I'm coming over and hitting M for move, but instead of clicking on the top of my surface, I'm going to click at the bottom. Now when I click at the bottom, or any other space that's a defined point, like a corner or an intersection, I can then snap that onto another corner, intersection, etc. So I'm hovering, and as I approach this line, you can see that it's snapped on there. It's been magnetized towards it. And the same will happen as I go up here. That bottom right hand corner is being magnetized and snapped onto that point. And now as I come across onto the middle of this object and click to finish, it has kept it above the surface because it's tracking that bottom of the object rather than the top. In this next example, we're going to move our objects along the axes in SketchUp. So in SketchUp we have a blue, red and green axis. The red and green are horizontal and perpendicular to each other, and the blue is vertical. It's the what makes something three-dimensional. Now, when we move an object, as we move it around, you might notice that it automatically snaps onto some of the axes, but it doesn't always do exactly what we want, and it's very hard to get it onto that blue axis, which is the vertical space. But what we have is the ability to control this using our arrows on our keyboard. So while I have the move tool activated and I've clicked on an object to move it, I can then tap the left arrow and it's going to snap it to the green axis. Now, no matter where I move my mouse on the screen, it's still only going to be locked onto that green axis. If I hit the right arrow, no matter where I move my mouse, it's going to be snapped onto the red axis. And the up arrow will do this for me in the vertical space on the blue axis. Now, extending on this, what I can do is hit M for move, select a particular piece of the object that I want to move by, and hit the arrow, and now get it moving in the direction that I want. Click to finish, and now I can type in a number that represents the distance away from that point that I would like it to go. So I've typed in 400 millimeters. I'd snapped it to the blue axis, and that's where it went. So I'll do that one more time. I hit the space bar for selection cursor, click on my object, M for move, click on a desired point that I want it to move from. Now I can hit the up arrow or the left or the right arrow, click to finish, and now I type in the desired height and enter. In this example, I've got terrain in my site. So my site moves up and down naturally, or after I get in there with some shovels and an excavator. And I want to place in stepping stones, which are natural stones. I haven't drawn them particularly well, but you'll get the idea. And I want to be able to move these across this terrain and keep them above ground. Now, I'm going to show you an example of what would happen if I used the move tool to try and tackle this by just clicking on my object on the top. You can see as I move around, it's sinking in, it's coming above, it's jumping around to all different positions. Now, this is an acceptable way to get things done if you want to split it up into two steps. So imagine I want to place my object somewhere else. I can take it over here, and then in a second move I can hit M for move again, up arrow to lock it onto the blue axis, and then move up and down. Yep. And you notice that while I was doing this, instead of saying directly over the top of it, I've moved into the side view so that I don't have to compete with all of the lines that it's trying to snap onto when I'm in this space. When I get to the side, the lines are covered by my object, and so now I can freely move up and down without it being locked onto something. However, there's another way that I can tackle this, and that is, instead of clicking on the object to move it, I can click on something, a reference point next to it. So I've hit spacebar, selected my object, and then hit M for move. And rather than clicking on this stone, I've come to the side at a point where I like the height between that is left above ground versus the mulch next to it. I've clicked on the mulch, and now as I move my mouse around, you'll notice that it's, as I hover over the mulch, it's roughly keeping that stone at that height above the mulch. Now this is meaning that I get a good result in some situations, but as the gradient increases, it becomes redundant anyway. So this is one of those things in Sketchup where you just need some experience to know the quickest way to get yourself through this task. The last thing we're going to tackle in this video is arraying. So up until now, we've been moving one object around our screen. This time, rather than moving our object, we want to create a duplicate. Now, it's as simple as activating your move tool, clicking to start moving, and then tapping the control key on PC. Now, rather than moving our object, you're moving a duplicate of that. As an extension of this array, what we can do is make multiple duplicates. So again, I'm moving my object. I've hit the control key and I've moved it to a desired spacing. And now I'm hitting Shift and the number 8, which will give me an asterisk for multiply. And then I'm typing in the amount of duplicates that I want. So I'm going to type in 3 and hit enter. And what's happened is it's moved a duplicate 100 mil away roughly, and then it's done 2 more duplicates at that same spacing for me. So let's do that slowly. I've hit M for move. I've clicked at a reference point. I've started moving in the direction that I want. I've hit the control key. Now I've clicked once I've got it the desired spacing. I've held down Shift and hit the number 8 to give me an asterisk for multiplying, and then I've typed in the desired amount of duplicates, which is 4 for me in this case. And there we go. Another way to use the array tool is to divide them over a space. The advantage of this is that you can use it to keep your objects within a boundary. So we can imagine this is some concrete and this is another pad of concrete, and we need stepping stones evenly spaced within them. Rather than taking a guess and using a multiplied array, which worked out almost perfectly there, what we can do is set a starting point and an end point and tell it how many duplicates we want in the middle of those 2 points. So what I'm doing is spacebar to bring up my cursor, selecting my object, hitting M for move, clicking on a reference point. I've tapped the control key and I move until it's in the desired position. I click. Now I hit the slash key for divide and then type in the number of duplicates I would like in between that space, including the last. So I'm going to hit 4 and enter, and it's given me 4 duplicates, 1, 2, 3, and 4.